Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show where we tackle the tough issues that improve the customer experience at your stores. Whether it's the front of the store or the back of the store, doesn't really matter, because the better the experience they have, the more they come back to you for everything they need when they need it. And they bring their entire tribe, their family members, the people they work with, the people they know on social media, everybody. This week, we've got an EV show of shows for you, and I've got a great panel with me here today. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining. And we're going to tackle some of the myths that are out there, and there are quite a number of them. So we've got a lot to cover in a very short time, so let's jump right into it. But, one more disclaimer. There is a glitch sometimes with somewhere between StreamYard and LinkedIn where your comments don't show up live. So if you're one of those folks where we're not responding to you, it's very possible that we're not seeing your comment, and they'll show up after the show and we'll address them. Or you can feel free to message or text your question or comment to one of us if you have our cell phone numbers, and we'll be happy to address it. So, gentlemen, welcome. I'm all charged up about this show. Why don't each of you introduce yourselves, starting from the top row on down, and so that some of the people that may or may not know you know a little bit more about you.
On my side, it looks like I'm on the top row. So assuming that's consistent, I'll get rolling. So thanks for having me, Paul. My name is Jimmy Douglas. I'm the founder and CEO of Plug, which is a wholesale auction dedicated to battery electric vehicles between dealers and fleets. Prior, my career started as a lot attendant at a VW dealer, and I also had a half a decade tenure at Tesla across several go-to-market leadership roles.
Excellent.
It's my name's Chris here, but it is worth pointing out that Jimmy's background is not fake. We established that at the beginning here, and that really is his backyard. So that's fantastic. Way better than my office. My name's Chris Schaefer. I have a bunch of background in automotive, from starting off as a car stereo installer way back when, to various capacities in fleet management where I'm at now.
Excellent.
Hey, thanks for having me, Opar Paul. Appreciate you. I'm Steve Burgett. I'm an EV educator and advocate with Plug and Play EV. Got about a decade plus in B2B marketing and kind of moving that into electric vehicles now. And yeah, just glad to be with you and part of the conversation. I'm based in just north of Boston, for anyone who is around that way.
Hey, Paul, Ray Hernandez. How are you? Thanks for having me. Gosh, lifetime fixed operations student is probably the best description, and or EV enthusiast. Been at this fun game since I was a kid, changing oil and sweeping floors 40 years ago, long time ago.
Hey, Paul, thanks for having me. Eric Smith. I came from Ford previously. I've done government sales for the better part of my career. As you can tell by the electric boat behind me, I am now the government sales coordinator for Voltari Electric, based out of Fort Lauderdale. And I'm probably the only one on the show tonight who has had 2 electric motorcycles, which were actually my first electric vehicles. So thanks for having me.
Excellent.
Yeah, very cool. Hey, I'm John Ellis. I have been in automotive for 20 plus years. Spent 17 of those years with Cox Automotive, with 3 of them with Toyota. I ran their EV battery solutions division for the last 2 years. And now I founded in that time that we have full time now is BEV Everything, which is an EV retail automotive consultancy, helping dealers transform their automotive operations for this electronic powertrain. So excited to be here, Paul.
Thank you, John.
Hey, my name is Dan. I'm the founder and chief experience officer at Surge Station. We're really seeking to kind of fundamentally disrupt the charging experience and turn that into experience that people actually seek out instead of by necessity. And yeah, thanks. I think it's going to be an exciting time today.
Excellent. Well, welcome. All right. First things first. This is a show about EVs and some misconceptions. We are not getting into any political aspect of this whatsoever. All right. So we're going to try to stay on track here. And, you know, the interesting thing about EVs is that whether you love them or hate them, I don't really care. I'm pro dealership, okay? And I talk to a lot of dealers, and what I find is that the conversation of carrying costs are choking us. That's starting to come up more and more often. All right. So my EV part of it, I don't drive an EV, but I spent a lot of time. I learned a lot from John Ellis at BV Everything about EVs, and I've spent probably way too many hours researching stuff on my own to get more educated on it. Unless you know about them and you know what your customers want and what's in it for them, you're not going to sell them. Period, plain and simple. All right. There's a lot of disinformation out there today. And what we're here to do tonight is dispel some of that. And probably the biggest one that comes up is range anxiety, okay, and charging infrastructure. People are freaked out about how far they can go. Are they going to run out of juice? When the average person drives less than 250 miles a week. And there are many EVs that get that or more on a full charge. The problem is we're not bringing that up enough to the people that could be perfect candidates to buy them. All right. So, gentlemen, what are some of the things that we could do to alleviate, or what's being done to alleviate some of those fears?
Yeah, Paul, I'll take that first because we work with dealers and we listen. So we want to know what the people that come in the store are saying are the reasons they're interested but not committed. Now, typically what you're going to find is they've read something on the internet, or a buddy ran out of juice, or they just read the Hertz debacle, and all of that is their paradigm, right? They just think this is not something ready for prime time. It's a fad or it's a niche, but it's just not ready for prime time. And it's really imperative for the dealer body, especially the sales staff. And it only starts with the leadership, because if they're not bought in, the sales staff won't learn and be bought in, to have the conversation that first discusses the myths in a way that is meant to alleviate anxiety, not tell the customer they're wrong, because that's never going to work. Flip side of that is, you said it in the beginning of the show, if I'm a salesperson on the floor and I've never driven an EV, I've never charged one, I've never felt what it felt like to go down to 3% before I got to the next charger, I'm probably not going to be able to have empathetic discourse. And without that, it's easily noticed by the prospective EV interested party that you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And once that happens, it's over. So I think the biggest place to start with range anxiety is first coming at it as a educator from a place of experience and confidence. And then the second is from a place of curiosity. Tell me what you know. Tell me about your driving behavior. Tell me about your lifestyle and ownership experience with your current vehicle. And then tell me why you might be interested in EV. Once you learn all that, you can determine real quickly if they're a good fit. And if not, like you say, BEV Everything is an EV consultancy, but we tell our dealers we're here to help you sell one more car, whether that's an EV or an ICE. We hope it's an EV, but the worst thing we can do is sell an EV to someone in the wrong way and then take a raving fan into a disgruntled customer. So I love it, Paul. I'm interested to hear the rest of the folks that are very knowledgeable in this area as well, but that would be my first thought.
I'd like to. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So, Paul, for me, I had that range anxiety real bad, and it was probably more rooted in not understanding the charging networks and so on and so forth. So, when you start to run low, it's like first thing I did was grab my phone and try and find the charging station, which was the absolute worst thing you could do, right? You don't know to rely on the car at the very first time you're running low on energy. And when you just start using the car for navigation, etc., it eliminates the range anxiety because it tells you, hey, you stop here. And what I found is that my stops, instead of the quick stop, run into the gas station, maybe go to the bathroom, keep go, the stops are a little bit more deliberate. But at the end of the day, once I start utilizing the actual car for navigation, all that range anxiety kind of evaporated.
Yeah, I don't see it as the big deal that everyone makes it out to be. I drive either Raquel's Tesla or my iPace multiple states over. I go into plug share. I figure I'm going to be about here when I need to charge. What's around there? Is there a restaurant? Is there other things to do? And I just plan around that. It's not as quick as fluid fuel, but it's not the end of the world that people think that it is.
Well, you have to ask yourself, how far a trip are you going to go on? And are you charged before you go? Right. I was in Dallas at NADA last year, and I asked the Tesla driver, the Uber driver, the same thing. I said, well, what if I want to go across the country? He said to me, no problem. He showed me right on the screen. It showed where all the chargers were. And these are power users that drive 7 days a week, and they're not concerned about it. So I'm thinking John or Jane Hugh Public that's driving less than 250 miles a week should be even less concerned. Now, the gentleman by the name of Ahmad had a question. He said, who is the primary driver of an EV? What's the primary person that would benefit from that?
The person writing the check for the car.
I think it's important to note there are very different use cases for it. It kind of segues with range anxiety. If you're driving in local conditions, you really don't have range anxiety unless you're one of these sales folks who needs to cover 400, 500 miles a day. Your average EV now is pushing 300. It's more than 300 miles for the average range of most of these cars. If you really focus on range for the model that you get, you're looking at more like 350. Even in winter, you're charging at home in most cases at the moment. You're starting from that 300 miles of range plus. Most people aren't going to cover that in a day. I've done 60,000 miles in less than 2 years here, and really it's that big trip to grandma's house or over to 3 or 4 states across that you're planning for, and that just speaks to Chris and Ray's points of you plan the trip, you know where the charges are. Sometimes the car will do that for you. Teslas, Polestars, Volvos, those are all got those great trip planners. Others maybe a little more work on you, but in either case it's more about, is there a charge where I'm going, rather than the range is the problem, I find.
Yeah, I would add that I think we know that the number one reason people don't buy electric cars is because of range anxiety. That's by far and away the number one reason. And one of the biggest reasons for that is we tend to be, humans like stories. And the story of being stranded without your car working is really captivating, and it's very emotional. And everyone's had that happen, even in an internal combustion car. Like it's happened. And that gut feeling is one that is a big barrier to overcome. And I think everyone's keyed into many, many parts of that. I think when you address that head on effort before that car leaves the lot, for example, they understand that this is something that you're going to encounter. And here's the toolkit. Here's the tool of how you manage the range of your EV instead of it being a bad thing or something that you have to be afraid of. Because the reality is, I love talking about the Chevy Bolt gets a 243 mile range. Very often with the type of driving that we do, when we're testing out, we'll get 340, 350 miles of range. And so it's not just a matter of, does the battery die? Are you stranded? It's a conversation about how do you use the car? How do you charge the car? When and where do you charge the car? And when we provide those answers to people, that really dissipates the range anxiety. And someone mentioned the number of miles that people drive. Most people really don't acknowledge that they drive less than 40 miles per day. It's not something you think about. And It really does come down a lot of the time to education.
I just want to
go ahead.
Yeah, Jimmy. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'll be quick. I just want to actually validate some concerns that a lot of people have, because if you think about the user experience, right, like the UX of driving an ICE car, you can leave your house and drive as long as you want and have no fears about getting stuck anywhere for the most part. And you don't have to rearrange your thought process or plan very hard to make that happen. And many people who are approaching this problem are comparing it to that experience and are concerned that the UX of driving an EV is not at parity with driving a combustion vehicle. And I think that's where we're sort of losing, because it is a fundamentally different asset, and it does require a mindset shift. And the mindset shift for some people, depending on which EV they've selected, can also be painful at times, because the experience around charger availability and uptime and payment and navigation is not as streamlined as it is on other vehicles. But what's important to recognize is where we are in the state of affairs of that UX is not where it's going. All of that is going to be so much better over the next couple of years, especially with the broad adoption of North American Charging Standard. And I think that if we meet people where they are and empathize with the fact that it can be a radical change in what they're used to experiencing, but show them hope of where it's going, we can help more people make an objective determination if it's the right time for them.
And let's face it, 2 years, a couple of years, that's nothing today, right? Especially in automotive, you blink your eye, it's a year later, right? I have an interesting comment here, and that comment is, in your opinion, how does EV compare to, say, ICE or diesel for inner city commute in terms of charging costs and overall trip time? Who wants to take that?
Inner city? Like
mainly
inner
because
city?
when I was at Ford, we were dealing with the NACS announcement, the North American Charging Standard, Tesla's connector. You know, Jim Farley jumped in first out of all the big OEMs. It is there to alleviate charging anxiety. And so it's not so much the range anxiety. If we start switching the narrative and think charge anxiety, you can tell an EV driver they can basically connect anywhere in the available network around them. That anxiety starts to dissipate. And then much like the intra-city versus intercity, it's all about planning. It's just like when we all drove petrol or diesel vehicles. You get empty, you got to plan ahead and figure out where you're going to refuel it. It just so happens most of us have the convenience of fueling at home with a level 2 charger or even a level 1 overnight. And those people who don't, that is probably, I think, where we're going to see the biggest next advancement is multi-unit residential or anyone who has to depend on DC fast charge. And that's probably where you hear most of the range anxiety issues coming from.
Well said. I'll just jump in from my own perspective really quick on the inner city driving question really quick, because for me, I have a pretty short commute. It's a few miles a day every day, and I can look at my total charging cost over the course of the last year and compare it to what it would have been if I were filling up with gas. So for the last year, I spent $485 on energy to fuel the car. 90% of that was at home, and my gas savings was $393 over that period. Anecdote of one.
I do think that piece of whether you can charge at home or not is important, though, because if you're not at the mercy of the public charging network, and you really are using that EV as primarily your commuter or your intracity, you know, whatever those local, anything that's under 200 miles in that day is going to be relatively easy. Again, because I know people who've never fast charged, they don't understand the problem with the public charging network, because why would they use the public charging network in their view? And it's important, to Jimmy's point, to remember those people who are in, you know, multi-unit dwellings who can't charge at work. But there are solutions in the pipe for those folks. But for the moment, it's obviously much better geared to people who can charge in their driveway. And for those people, it's actually saving a lot of time. If you think about cutting out a gas errand, aside from the costs and whatever else you're saving, whatever the price of gas is right now, it's a crucial piece of the puzzle to being an advantage to owning an EV versus if you're an apartment dweller and you need to go and do a charging errand every week, then it turns the tables a little bit, and it's worth having a conversation with people who are in that same situation, I think.
Yes, one of the things we talk to dealers about is a qualifying conversation, right? We're not even in the consultative sales process yet. We just want to qualify the customer as an EV applicant, right? That their lifestyle fits. If I'm in a multi-unit dwelling in downtown Chicago, it's going to be really tough. So we have to determine if there's public facilities available at their office or maybe at a shopping mall. We have people in our small town that charge for free in our shopping mall, right? So that's something that they do without charging. My father had just put a 240 in his garage. He didn't put a Tesla charger in there, and he just plugs into it. I've got a 240 in my trunk. So when I go to Baton Rouge and visit my mother, I plug it into her dryer, and she plugs her dryer right to the back of it. And we went to an island on Florida with no charging, and I plugged into the 110. We didn't go anywhere, so I was fully charged every other day, right, by plugging into the outlet in the garage that I parked in at the condo. So you really have to qualify the customer and their comfortability with the lifestyle they're going to choose when they have an EV. And it's really a pretty easy decision once you listen.
Now, Bob Alvine, he is my dealer who I bought my car from. And he says, I've been driving an EV for a year and a half, more than a year and a half. The range anxiety is completely gone. I felt it was important to drive an EV so that I can best understand the customer's journey from ICE to BEV. Now, you want to talk about classic fish things from the head? Bob is the dealer principal at Premier Auto Group, okay? He took it upon himself to get educated with it, and that trickles down to the rest of the store, right? It has to start at the top, because if there isn't buy-in at the top, it's never going to happen. And guess what? All of these men and women in our industry that are cheering on the anti-EV bias, they're not doing those dealers any service, because they're not helping them move the cars off the lot. So, that's a perfect example. Thanks for sharing that, Bob.
Yeah,
You know,
Bob,
and
that's
Paul-
very courageous. Sorry, Ray, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Paul, to your point, it's not just the education. Bob just took it upon himself to experience it, right? Because you can read about it and educate yourself all you want, but until you experience it firsthand, and that I'm in a BEV for over a year and a half and the range anxiety is gone. I mean, right now, for me, as odd as it'll sound, I have more cell phone anxiety, like, oh, did I forget to plug my phone in last night because it's not going to last the whole day? My car doesn't even enter into the equation anymore. So my range anxiety, much like Bob, is completely gone. Look, you got a backup charger for your phone. There's no backup charger for your car.
Yeah.
But it's always with me because I have anxiety, right?
I think a lot of dealers have that Tesla that's got 80,000 miles that's been sitting on the lot for 92 days. I know a lot of car dealers that tell me that's often the specific car that they quote in some of our back and forths. Why not let one of your best salespeople who doesn't drive an electric car drive it home, slap a dealer plate on it, have them experience that, have them understand what that journey is like. And I think it's odd to say too. I think we're talking about qualifying the customer. That's really great. It's hard, I think, for me, and I know for a lot of people to sort of imagine saying, actually, maybe right now at this point in your life, maybe an electric car is maybe not the best choice for you right now, unless you're ready to make those kinds of choices that we just talked about. Are you ready to sit at Walmart for 45 minutes while your car charges, if there's a charger available, right? Like those. But I think if we have those conversations with people, they're much less likely to be surprised and be upset about it, because that's usually what happens, right? Like they get excited, you get the keys, the fob, whatever it is, the key card, you drive it home. Then a week and a half later, your car is at 12% and you're waiting in a line to charge it. Like those are when that negative sentiment happens. But I'd love to see more dealers doing that. Like I know plenty of them have a car that's been on the lot too long that maybe you just slap a dealer plate on, drive around for a little bit, learn that experience. I think that would change a lot of minds, and it would help educate on the back end as well, or the front end for the customer.
Yeah, we encourage that. It's a great idea. When you're educating a team, most of the dealer groups we work with pick about 10 people in their dealer group to be like champions or ambassadors. And we ask them, please give them loaners. We can train them all day long, but unless they know what it's like to drive one home, to feel their little bit of range anxiety themselves, wait for a charger, like you said, they're not going to be able to have the conversation in the credible way that they need to for the customer, who probably has done more research than they'd ever done, to feel like I've got the right person in front of me. I'm in the right place. This dealership can help me. And if you lose that battle, you've lost the sale. Not only that, but it could have been an ICE sale, not an EV sale, depending on the qualification process.
You never know. And to look at Bob here. He says, it's important to show the customer how to get charging in their homes, right? If their daily commute is less than 200 miles, no need for outside charging. I repeat, no need for outside charging. That provides significant comfort to the customer. As a dealer, you want to have a network of charging installers ready to go, right? So if a customer comes in and you've done the qualification and they're a candidate for the vehicle, make it easy for them, okay? Offer them an Amazon-like experience. I look for stuff on Amazon. I don't even know what it is sometimes. I do a search for what I think it does, and Amazon pops up this thing, and 2 seconds later, I'm swiping and I'm buying it, and 2 days later, it's at my house. So if you have the installers ready to go, and you're able to line the customer up with the right car for them, if they don't have to think about what's next, you make it easy for them, I think that's golden right there.
I think there's also a piece of having those that hardware available at your dealership, as being able to plug in and go out and show. A lot of the kind of EV or PHEV only dealerships around me in Massachusetts have made that investment in some form of fast charging, some form of level 2, kind of the equivalent of home charging, and are able to go out and show, here's what, if you plug this model in, here's what it's going to show you, how long it's going to take from 40%, 50%, here's what it looks like on a fast charger, and to walk them through that experience so that the first time they do that is at your dealership with someone who's willing to help them and hold their hand, give them that education, rather than, as Dan said, in a Walmart parking lot, poorly lit, 9 o'clock at night. They don't want to be there. Much more user-friendly experience if that's the dealer showing you how to do that.
Well, and I wanted to ask John, since he deals with dealers more relevantly, for those dealers that have charging infrastructure, is that something they actually do, either with customers or other employees?
There are dealers that offer free charging to their customers. Okay, think about the size of a dealership, whether it's the lot, the grounds, or the roof. All right. Now, I remember Chris from previous show. I think you spend $0 on charging because you have a whole solar setup, right? Imagine a solar field or a solar farm at your dealership, where you're basically getting the juice for free that you can share with your customers. They drove to you to buy the car, so obviously you were convenient. You think they'll come back for free juice? What's that going to do for customer loyalty, customer retention?
But Paul, I think what Steve was getting at was part of that customer experience is actually making them charge the vehicle or walk them over to the charger. In all the vehicles that I've purchased, all the electric vehicles, not once did the salesman ever actually say, let me go show you how to charge the vehicle.
Right.
And I think that might actually be a failure point when we're talking customer experience. It's just an assumption by a lot of people, oh, you know how to charge the vehicle. And then they get home and they're trying to figure out, which charger do I use?
Yeah, I haven't personally seen it because I'm not on that side of it. I asked the question of the salespeople because I want to know. I hear people crying about the cars are sitting on the lot costing them money. So I want to know, do they know enough about the car or the people that drive them to be able to have the conversation to sell them, right? But yeah, to your point, I think somebody shared with me some stuff that a rental company sends to them prior to their arrival, all right, at the rental facility, all about EVs and EV charging. So at the dealership, yeah, absolutely. If the salespeople can walk the customers right through that process, that's huge. Remove all of the roadblocks and you make it easier for them.
Some of the rental companies are a case study, an ideal case study and what not to do. I mean, it sounds good that they're getting that information out there, but most of the people that you're seeing in these stories where people are stuck at chargers are people who've been thrown out into the world with a rental EV, maybe charged to 40 or 50% and not told how to do it. That's that is your litmus test of what not to do as a dealership. You want to be sending those people out into the world as confident as they possibly can be that they're in the right vehicle and that they know what they're doing, even if it's just some kind of short-term lease or some kind. There's a lot of people doing, or manufacturers doing, starting to figure out how to get people into an EV for a short amount of time. They still need that confidence. You can't be throwing people at the public charging infrastructure as it is right now without some kind of education before they leave your facility, I think.
Yeah, I wonder if one of the ways, and this is where the complexities of F&I are not my strong point, but I wonder if one of the profit centers that dealers miss out on is the full end-to-end of when the vehicle leaves the lot to when the charger gets installed in the house. I really think there's something there that could be explored by a dealer who really wants to go there, by getting a trusted partner or 2 or 3 in their area, rolling it into the total package with the vehicle. Hey, we're going to take care of everything. Because I will tell you, most people find that later part, whether you're doing with Qmerit or a vendor, it's not necessarily pleasant, but everything you can kind of bump into that sale at the dealership level, I think is helpful. But it's also a real value add to the customer, where you're rolling that in with the car, helping the customer set up that appointment with your vendor. Then you create an educational opportunity. I think you you can actually push off some of the more complicated charging questions and training to the vendors that you set up that bring those chargers to the house, because they're the real experts. Like they know that stuff like so well, and they do a great job in the house, in the home with the customer. And I'm willing to bet that there's quite a few vendors who, or let's say electricians in your area, who'd be willing to have a constant stream of that income to help educate your customers on your behalf. So I think there's something there.
There's a couple of startups that help
street.
dealers do that too. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Paul.
That's a two-way street also, because the installers and the people that sell the chargers, they can bring you customers and vice versa. So it's a win-win for all parties involved. Now,
Yeah,
Roger says here, when is the mass amount of used EVs going to hit the market?
2026, Roger. That's when the wave of lease returns spurred by the Inflation Reduction Act in 2023 are going to start hitting us all. I think in a single quarter, over 80,000 went out.
And it's interesting to notice, even on a 3-year-old vehicle, you still have 5 years of battery warranty. So it's a bit of a bargain at that point.
5 years remaining at the end of the 3 years.
Remaining, correct.
Yeah, that's right.
So, I hear all the time, well, why would I buy a used EV? I'm going to say, why wouldn't you? As long as the machine is under warranty, you don't have to worry that the previous owner changed their oil, changed the spark plugs, did whatever. The car doesn't even let you abuse it. And you still have warranty left over, and you've taken a good depreciation hit. I don't see why you wouldn't buy a used EV.
I just did. Yeah, the car I bought was a used EV.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of brings us into our next point. High purchase cost and economic considerations. I think the used EV, that's the sweet spot, right? When the payment that the customer is looking for today, look, granted, I think the overall numbers aren't quite there yet, but the advantage is the number of dealers actually taking advantage of that is also very small in proportion. So for those that lead the charge, if you'll pardon the pun, now's a great opportunity to get started on something like that.
Yeah, Hertz has left the door wide open, right? It gives our market the opportunity to experience low-cost EVs. Try it before you overexpose yourself financially to a higher dollar EV. And the flip side is to what's been mentioned here today. These are 1- and 2-year-old cars with very few miles on them. Have plenty of their full warranty, not just their powertrain warranty, which includes the battery and the motor. And from what any study you can see today, Tesla did many, Model S, Model Y. We're getting more and more battery data, and these things last 500 to 1 million miles. So unless you get a limit or it's an abused vehicle, you've got a quality vehicle that's going to have nice residual value when the values balance out. Right now we're in a demand war with the OEMs and Tesla, so we're just seeing some inorganic changes in prices. Has nothing to do with the value of the vehicle, and eventually the residual values are going to make OEMs and lease companies as well as fleet companies have to reevaluate their entire remarketing revaluation strategies on these cars. They're going to be worth so much more than their comparable ICE vehicles at their aging process. So it's an exciting time. It's an open market right now. Now's the best time to get in.
The pricing has come down considerably also. Jimmy, you were talking about I think it was you talking about Rivian, what's happening with pricing there, and Tesla and the BYD cars that are coming.
Well, it's broadly, right? Like the used EV product is suddenly dramatically more accessible to a much broader set of customers than ever before, and the used Model 3 product available directly from Hertz through their own retail channel is a great example of that, like John mentioned. It's across the board. It's a great time compared to a year ago, where the price point might have been the primary hindrance for someone to adopt because they were priced out.
Yeah, and the price reductions on the used side, on the front side, on the new side, have made the used side more affordable. And to Chris and John's point from earlier, it's the battery is the engine, the transmission, and the differential. So it's like buying that used vehicle with a powertrain warranty already built into the price, and it's relatively cheap. Somebody else took the big hit on the front side.
Yeah, I actually wonder if used EV leasing, like second leasing, is going to become a pretty large phenomenon for that reason, because the depreciation curve it should be way flatter after that front end hit, especially as more data emerges to show just how much longevity they have. But an EV is very far away from the end of its useful life when it's at 100, 120, 150,000 miles. We know that to be true already.
The other thing about that, Jimmy, I think it's such a great point you bring up, is that the minerals in that battery are extremely valuable. And that, just unlike an engine or a transmission, all you can do is melt those things, right? You can take the battery from that EV, and we've done this. A company that I led for a couple of years at Cox, we recycled 25,000 metric tons of black mass a year from EV batteries. And there was a big manufacturer recall in the market that allowed us to do that. It wasn't natural for us to recall and refurbish and recycle that many batteries, but we were able to. And it's a viable market for remanufacturing brand new batteries. If you get a 92 to a 98% recovery rate on those minerals, and all you're doing is building a brand new battery. There's no degradation in the mineral. So when you own an asset, the most valuable part of that asset is that battery. And when that car is at the end of its life and the battery is dead, the minerals are still brand new. And companies aren't thinking about that in that residual feeling. So when you talk about leasing EVs, certainly if I'm an OEM, I'm like, I want to keep those minerals in my supply chain. I want to lease that used EV. I want it to come back to me. Because when it's dead, I want to take that battery, send it to a recycler, and put it back in my supply chain.
Yeah, someone in the chat just asked the recycling efficiency on the metals and lithium, and you quoted 92 to 97%. And when Justin Butera did a presentation at NADA for Redwood Materials, I think he quoted over 99%. And it continues to be an evolving industry.
99% of the entire battery, so the plastics, the coils, and all that as well. 92 to 97 of the minerals, because there's some deterioration with what comes out of that recycling process. But yeah, so he's right. 99% of the battery is reusable, and 92 to 97% of the minerals are recovered.
It's amazing.
What's interesting about that is that you look at an ICE vehicle that's got 250, 300,000 miles on it. The motor goes to the scrapyard. There's nothing recycled there.
Well, the biggest problem, as far as I understand, that they're having at the moment in the recycling sector is supply. They simply don't have enough batteries coming in because they last, a lot longer than people have been expecting. So maybe those early Nissan Leaf who were, cooking those batteries out in the desert of Arizona are starting to fail. But after that, everything has been very well managed. The battery management system is cooling and heating when it needs to. So these packs are staying in really good condition. So to everybody else's point, it's going to last a lot longer than a lot of the other pieces on the car and the consumables that are regular wear and tear. It's not a transmission that's dropping out or one of these massive replacements you're going to have to do. It's simply the battery will keep on going and going for a long time beyond, a lot of people's expectations.
Oh yeah, second life batteries are a big thing, to your point, and it'll get there. We tried to build EBSs and VBSs with Nissan Leafs, and it's not easy, right? Just the battery management systems to get all those working together. So it's a difficult task when you have the batteries, because they're not all like same cell components and chemistry, obviously. But that market is going to explode in the next 10 to 15 years. I mean, Elon's saying it now, get in the minerals market, and he's talking about that as well.
Refinement of lithium.
It's going to be something like we've never seen before.
This comment that's up here, can anyone speak to that? Except for Tesla, every single EV manufacturer loses tens of thousands on every EV sold.
Well, I'm assuming they're referring to domestic EV manufacturers in that comment. And yeah, Tesla had to get to volume production before it started producing gross margins that were that favorable. And if you look at their number of BEV deliveries versus everybody else, you'll see how lopsided it is. So with volume production and material and manufacturing cost reductions through efficiencies and supply chain management comes profitability. But yeah, they're not building that many yet.
It also
But the flip side of that,
depends who you believe, because they just had the New York International Auto Show. The Hyundai representative there, Randy Parker, was saying that they're making a profit on every EV they sell, and those are some of the ones that are the most accessible leases in the country. Some of the kind of mine is a Hyundai, so I'm biased, but at the same time, Kia, all of the EGMP platform cars, a lot of those are becoming pretty affordable, and if they're saying they're profitable, they may be moving the numbers around a little bit, but it's only getting more so because that domestic production is being pursued. A lot of these are trying to get into North American production and assembly to access the incentives, so it's only going one way.
Yeah, there are companies making huge billions of dollars in investments in that charging.
I do
want
want
to roll the cost. I'm sorry. When you roll the whole cost, though, the research and development, the whole deal into the equation, most of them, of course, are still losing money because they haven't covered the initial bet. Nobody's saying, okay, what's the cost to actually produce this thing now that all the behind the scenes work is done, and are we physically making money on a unit by unit basis? Yeah, but have we covered the total cost of getting here? Of course not. But as time progresses, I think to Jimmy's point, you're going to get there. It's just, did it cost you this much when you roll everything to the mix? Sure. What's the total cost to produce the darn thing now? And what's the total cost of, what are you selling it for? And is there a unit by unit profit? And what's the multiple to get there, right? So that's what
if you
Tesla
think about Toyota, what they call the Model X? You remember? A work of art. It blew their mind. The most efficient manufacturing company in North America was floored when they went to Tesla's facility and watched them make the Model X. That's why Tesla's profitable and the OEMs are not. They're having to convert ICE manufacturing acumen, supply chains, software, connectivities, and mechanical manufacturing process to fit an EV car, and it's killing them. And that's the problem. Tesla didn't have to convert ICE to EV manufacturing software. They'll tell you right now, they have to talk to 10 different chip manufacturers to make one change, 3 different software manufacturers to make one addition. Tesla doesn't have to do that. They write it in the room at night. That's why they're not profitable. And it'll be a long time before they get there. Here's what happened, in my humble opinion. They got punch drunk on incentive money. They started committing billions of dollars into supply chain contracts because COVID scared them to death. Just-in-time inventory killed them with chips and other problems that they faced because they had no control over their supply chain. So when the government said we're going all EV and here's all your money, they shifted gears so fast. And these guys get paid millions and millions of dollars, and they made huge missteps because all they were doing was following the money. So look, we'll get there, and they're doing a lot better. I love that Farley's coming out there and listening to dealers and taking his lumps. That's very impressive. And I love some of the other stuff we're seeing as far as pullbacks from the OEMs. It's smart. I mean, they have investors and stockholders that they're beholden to, but they made huge mistakes, and they had very wealthy people in consulting and high positions that made elementary mistakes. And so we're back. Hertz did the same thing, but we'll all get better for it, and our job is to help them. And we will.
I also wonder, though, like, how many people lose sleep at night and honestly say, I'm really worried that some executives at Ford are losing some money on every, I don't.
It's not the executives. You're right. I mean, we could care less about it, but it's when they lose money, they charge more for their cars. And our consumers end up paying the money.
Sure. But if you look at, like, how do you sort of engineer that same question, turn it right back where we just talked about used cars. A lot of dealers can buy a used EV right now for $19,000 and quickly turn it around for $30,000 to $34,000. And that is a nice, healthy profit that can be seen from that. Like, we track the ID4 specifically often. Dealers are buying ID4s for $19,000 and selling them for $31,000. So, like, we can have complex conversations about supply chain, and those are valid concerns. And I don't mean like it's not a good faith question to ask about that. But at the end of the day, like, they are going to make those investments in the infrastructure necessary, or China's going to make electric vehicles. That's just what's going to happen. Like, it's going to go that way. And either the OEMs can continue to invest and build, and it's going to cost a lot of money, but on the back end of that is cool new cars that people like, or they're going to cede their market share to Mexico, to China, to to the Korean market. It is going to happen. It's going to happen a lot faster than we saw in the 80s, the 70s and 80s, with really ultimately the reverse on the ICE end. When the shift towards, fuel efficient vehicles cause that massive disruption, it's just going to happen at scale that is 100 to 200 times faster because of the technology. So,
what's interesting is that from a consumer standpoint, their perception, I think, is that the EVs are relatively new, right? We're in automotive. We know they've been around for a while. But what I didn't realize until I started digging, some of these Chinese companies that build EVs, they've been building them since the 90s, right? There's been a long time at this game. And there's a reason why they have the amount of market share that they do globally. They didn't just come to market yesterday. And I don't think too many people realize that.
Paul, I use BYD products at the airport. Mostly the bag tugs, what you see driving the carts around and what have you. They're pretty good. They're really good. And if they're coming to the United States market, I think they're going to be a formidable competitor for sure. It's a pretty good machine at the airport level, and I imagine they're going to translate that to cars.
And the interesting thing about the comment about how much money is lost, a lot of companies lose money in the beginning. Toyota lost thousands, right, on the Prius, thousands,
Tens of thousands per car.
tens of thousands. Look, and other companies. Look at Amazon. People are laughing. Oh, Amazon, they lost so much money. Well, anybody want to trade places with a Prius dealer now or Jeff Bezos? I think everybody within earshot would. It's return on learning, ROL. I learned that from a guy named Brian Benstock. Everybody knows about return on investment, but very few people, know about return on learning.
Yeah,
now, we're learning.
One of the learnings is, and I ask this question a lot, what percentage of the EV product is the destination charging network? I think, yeah, I've heard 50%, I've heard 90%, who knows? But going back to the earlier part of this call, until somebody feels confident they can get in the car and drive 100 miles away from their house, like the utility value of the EV is probably not going to be at parity with the ICE vehicle. And right now, EVs cost more than ICE vehicles, and most of the lineup is not at user experience parity. And that's where the charging infrastructure component of this is really needed before people are really going to get excited about it.
Well, without
Another
getting
mistake the OEMs made, guys. Look, I love this industry and I love our OEMs, but why would you ever allow 75% of the value of your customer experience in the vehicle you build to be outsourced? Elon didn't do it. Right? He built his own infrastructure to make sure his customer experience was second to none. And all these other manufacturers, all they cared about was pushing EVs to the market, and they allowed ChargePoint and Blink, and they're all doing a great job. I'm not down it, but they gave that big part of their experience away without even paying attention to it. And it's why they're not. I'm telling you right now, if North American charging standards and the relationship with Tesla and the payment systems and software had been all integrated 2 years ago, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The Lightning and the Mach-E and the ID4 and everything will be highly adopted. Those are amazing vehicles. I've driven them all. I've looked at the batteries of almost every one of them. I opened up a Hummer battery. That thing is as big as a double California King, and it weighs 6,300 pounds. I've seen them all. There's nothing different there. These cars are beautiful. The crab feature is amazing. They're not selling because of what Jimmy just said. The way they test it.
The policy, without getting political, because I know we don't want to talk about politics, but there is a policy aspect of this adoption curve. And one of the fastest moving segments of EVs right now is very, very high end. You talked about Rivian, you talked about the Mercedes brand. And as those ultra high net worth individuals experience these pain points, which a lot of them have not experienced, like getting stuck at a charger, they are going to move the needle with the policy influence decisions. And it's going to happen a lot faster than, unfortunately, mass adoption, because those conversations for the people who do write those checks are going to start happening, because it's one bad charging experience and one phone call, and conversations that weren't happening 2 years ago are happening right now. I see that often.
That's good.
So,
yeah.
And somebody mentioned the charging network, the infrastructure, et cetera. That portion of the investment really hasn't even started to pay off yet. As all these
I think
other
they've only
companies
built
are-
like 2 or 3. I think only 2 or 3 have been built.
right,
Yeah.
but as all these other companies, for example, in the Tesla case, as all these other companies are adopting that North American charging standard, guess what? That's where that additional, 55, how many thousands, tens of thousands of Tesla superchargers that are out there, and now you start charging a royalty on top of that. That's where that other, what percentage of your investment is the network for Tesla? That's where that's going to really start to pay off. When the Mercedes driver, that luxury high-end driver is going to that Tesla charger and charging up, and behind the scenes, they're paying a premium to Tesla. So
Oh, yeah.
where does that stop? That
Don't stop buying Tesla stock, guys. I don't care what they just came out with Q1 numbers that everybody was so disappointed in. They missed by a couple cars here and there. Don't stop buying the stock. The infrastructure is the value of Tesla, not the car.
It's important to emphasize how much change there is going on right now. I mean, it's not necessarily something people see day to day, but if you look at any truck stop across the US over the next year, there's going to be charging starting to pop up. Some of it's federally funded, some of it, a lot more actually, probably a good 80 to 85% is actually just private investment going into these, so maybe they get some federal funds at some points, but a lot of this is happening on the private level. No convenience store chain, no truck stop brand, none of them want to be left behind. So all of these places are putting charges in, and plus add that to Ray's point about just 10,000-15,000 superchargers opening up overnight if you get that adapter and start to move towards the NACS standard. All of this stuff is really happening quickly. So you may be considering an EV now. Whatever map you look at for charging is going to look completely different this time next year.
Oh yeah, and then you think about from the convenience. Somebody mentioned the convenience side of it. The primary goal of the gas stations over the last how many years was to get the customer into the convenience store, because that's where they were making their margin. If you really think about it right now, that car is going to
margins made on the product, not the gas.
Right, that car is going to take 3 to 5 times longer to fuel up with electric charge. You want to have that customer there, because guess what? That Wawa, for example, it's chock full of Tesla chargers. Guess what I'm doing every time I stop there? I'm going into the convenience store. Where in the past, I gas so quickly, by the time I'm done with the bathroom, I'm done, and I keep on going, right? So I didn't really frequent the convenience store, but every time I stop the Tesla to charge, I'm in the convenience store. And I think I bought something just about every time.
Or
Two
Target or
things.
CVS.
Station offline to convert to EV DC fast charging. Same thing. Exemplify the convenience store experience.
Yeah. 2 things here. Greg Dudley. I love this. Give the printer away and sell the ink. Okay. When I have to replace the cartridges on my laser station in my office here, it cost me $1,000. $1,000 to replace the toner cartridges, because I get the XL.
1,000?
Yeah.
$1,000.
You really have to.
It's
You really
a
have
rich,
to print anything right now anymore?
it's a rich people
Jeez.
printer.
I'm telling you. And we use in our retail store, it's the same thing. It's $1,000 for 4 toner cartridges. I swear to God, I bought used cars for less back in
Holy
the day.
shit, Paul!
Okay.
$1,000 for toner? Wow.
$1,000.
But you got a hell of a deal on the printer, right?
Yeah,
Buy a new printer every time.
No, that was the printer was like $500 at the time.
Oh my goodness.
And to your point about the convenience store, I'm not going to lie. We were on a road trip to DC recently, and I did go in and have that Popeye's chicken sandwich. So I don't see the charging really as being an issue if you work at the same way gas stations work at convenience stores.
Paul, I don't know if you saw a little bit ago, I posted on LinkedIn about driving back from Milwaukee to St. Louis. And in between is Pontiac, Illinois, that they have a Wally's station. And Wally's gave me the charging, but I in that 40 minutes that it took me, because my iPace is slow, I bought a Wally's t-shirt. I bought a Wally's mug for my wife. I had some popcorn. I spent about $70 in the place.
I saw that.
And there was an Electrify America, probably 20 miles out. I would have spent less at that Electrify America, but I would have been bored. I spent more money and had a better experience at Wally's charging up my car. So I was happy to spend the money.
I love to hear it.
Yeah, well, also these vehicles have screens in them, right? We watch our series, right? We catch up on series in the 20 minutes it takes to charge. It's not a problem. To your point, there's a Target, a CVS, a sub shop at every stop, right? They're smart. Everybody builds around the dang charger. Things are popping up all around the Tesla chargers like popcorn. Of course they are, right?
So as more education comes out, there will be more adoption, right? People's perceptions of the product will change because it's getting easier. It's getting better. We may not be there right now, this moment, but the way technology moves, it's moving fast.
Well, there was a comment before which I thought was salient and on point, really, that as soon as people start seeing them in their neighborhood, right, as soon as their neighbor has one in the driveway or they start having those conversations locally, that's what starts to spike that S curve. And a lot of these are going to be indifferent. They'll be regional. I think Eric pointed that out in the comments as well. There's going to be patchwork adoption here, but as California has gone first for our kind of adoption curve, I'm certainly noticing it, locally. There's a lot more here in Massachusetts starting to spike up in different driveways, different neighborhoods. And I think that's where you start to get the education piece. Still needs to be on the dealer, still needs to be on the manufacturers, but there's going to be a lot more just conversations, and people start to realize range anxiety, charger anxiety, all of these things. Their neighbor can do it. People they know well locally can do it. It starts to really snowball after that.
Well, and to Jimmy's point earlier, now that we're going to start seeing more used EVs come on the market, it makes perfect sense with the timing from the NEVI funding. The next phase is disadvantaged and lower income communities. So the timing is just a matter of iteration. We're just not there yet.
Don't forget broke startup founders. I was very happy to find a deal on a used Model Y when I needed a new car.
Look at Jimmy showing off his pool now in his back.
Of course he is. He worked hard on that.
It was just warmer on the side of the table.
So my background
Yeah,
is real as well, just so you guys know.
Yeah.
It's real Hilton Garden Inn.
I only bought one new EV. Both my Model 3s were used. Relatively new used, but I mean, I took the hit away, right? I got a really good deal on both.
And the mileage doesn't really seem to make a difference on these cars.
No, they were in the 20 and 1,000 mile range. So, I mean, I had plenty left, right?
Well, the
Well,
warranty is 10 years.
Yeah, well, I think the Model 3 performance I have is a 12-year 120, if I'm not mistaken. The Model 3 long range I had before that was a 10-year 100.
and
Somebody had a
No. It's a 10-year 120 and a 10-year 100. Yeah. So I got 120,000 more miles on the performance model.
And somebody had a comment earlier, what's the cost of replacing an engine? 10 grand, 12 grand?
Well, I did a transmission for $7,500 in my kid's Camaro, so I asked, what if I had the transmission and the engine in his Camaro? And he said, oh, that would probably cost you about 22 to 25 grand. And that is the electric powertrain, a transmission and an engine.
Right.
So yeah, 25 to 30 grand.
It's funny you say that. When Prius came out, I was working as a dealership mechanic, and everybody got into a panic and called up Toyota to see how much that battery was going to be. And never mind that it was a brand new product, that it was only available at the dealership, and it had a low failure rate, right? And it was just crazy numbers. I don't remember what it was. We'll just say crazy. As it is right now, I have personally bought a battery for a 2007 Prius, remanufactured, has better specs than the factory unit, and it was under $1,000, right? So the aftermarket is going to do what the aftermarket always does. They're going to rebuild the batteries. You're going to, as demand goes up, the battery cost is going to go down. Everything about technology, everything about automotive parts indicates that that's how it goes. So to call up the dealership today and battery for my I-Pace, while they're all under warranty and there's only one supplier for them, and it happens to be you, the dealership, that's a pointless exercise.
Yeah.
It's going to go down. Historically, it has. I've seen Volt batteries remanufactured with a 3-year, 36,000-mile warranty for under $5,000. I personally bought a Prius battery for less than $1,000, where before it was 5 digits.
And just for our audience, I mean, a Prius battery is not a BEV battery. It's not a kind.
Well, no, but it's still.
But
it's
yeah,
still
I get what you're
battery.
saying. Just so
It's
they
still-
know, we all know.
Right.
Yeah, but if you
It's
worry
probably
about
1/20th of that
remanufactured-
first cost he got quoted. I
Yeah.
think that's the point, right?
Yeah.
Right.
If
So,
you
I
worry
mean,
about
we all
remanufactured
remember
batteries,
when
that's good.
LED TVs came out and your buddy got one for $2,000 and it heated up the whole house because it was cooking everything. And now we go over to Target for $300 and we buy one and bolt it on the wall. We know if my TV broke today, I would run to Target and get another one for a few $100 and wouldn't even think about it.
Oh, that's a great analogy, Chris.
Yeah.
That's a great
That's
analogy.
perfect. Spot on. So you think about that plasma TV. What is it going to cost me to replace that plasma TV 8 years from now? I don't know. The thing's
Right.
not available anymore. It's cost you a fucking ton. It's LED is where it's at, right? So the LED is an eighth of the price, and
Yep.
it's better. And by the way, they're bigger too.
Yeah. So
Well, in the blink of an eye, it's an hour later. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on and sharing. This has been a great show. I really appreciate all of you. Any final thoughts you want to leave us with before we sign off?
Paul, I'm going to say something. My parents are interested in getting a electric vehicle now, and if my parents can be converted, everybody can be converted. They're
Same.
Love it. Love it.
My
They're
mom
all
is
there.
75 years old, and she got a Audi Q4 e-tron and lives in Fort Worth, Texas.
It's also Drive Electric Earth Month. It's expanded out from being a week to a month now. So there's a lot of
Oh,
events going on right
yeah.
now. You can check out. There's if you want to get into a low pressure scenario where you can just go out and talk to people about their electric vehicle ownership experiences, or maybe get a ride and drive. All that stuff is happening this month. So good opportunity to go and take a look.
Awesome.
Any other final thoughts?
You know, Paul, I think about Bob's comments from earlier on, Bob Alvin, and the stuff. When you walk that mile, when you actually experience what the customer is going to experience, and he mentioned when you could provide the customer a level of comfort, right? So that comfort is in what fits best for you. And as more and more people get to experience it firsthand, like Bob took that initiative to experience it firsthand, and it dissolved. Same thing happened to me. The first time I drove it, it was crazy. Then I programmed it in the car, and I literally have never had that situation again.
I agree.
Well, thank you. To the audience that watches weekly, thank you. To those that watch it on the replay, thank you for supporting the show. We are all in the automotive business here, or some facet of it. I'm always ready to connect with like-minded professionals. If there's relevancy in what you do and what I do, or what some of these folks here do, by all means, reach out to us. We'd love to connect. And comments usually come through well after the show's over. I wish you all a safe and successful next week, and we'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, everybody.